Barry, you know what, I'm gonna call an audible and suggest, if we don't have a window open, we should. It's only gonna get hotter, and I haven't even taken questions yet. Well, let's do that.
Hot air in here, no hot air in here.
There's no hot air
No
in
hot
here.
air in here.
Oh. Thank you, guys, appreciate it. You will too. All right,
Be like workers' comp industry.
I know.
There we go, we got it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Marconi.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. The Lieutenant Governor and I are pleased to be here today with members of our great team, this cabinet, to present our administration's budget proposal for fiscal year 2026. I want to thank all the teams across the executive branch who worked really hard over many weeks, many months, to ensure that we're presenting a budget that is fiscally sustainable while also meeting the needs and supporting the people of our state. Special thanks to A&F Secretary Matt Gorkowitz and the A&F team, including Undersecretary Jen Sullivan and Assistant Secretary for Budget Chris Marino, along with all of the analysts and managers. Really, really appreciate it. For the past 2 years, we have focused on things that matter to people in Massachusetts, and we've also taken on some of the toughest challenges. There are issues like housing costs, transportation infrastructure, that for far too many years have been neglected and allowed to grow worse. But we've refused to kick the can down the road. Working with the legislature and through strong fiscal management, we've taken these issues on and we are turning them around. We've made life more affordable with the first tax cuts in 20 years for seniors, families, and businesses. We're tackling a housing shortage and building homes that more people can afford through the $5 billion Affordable Homes Act. We're investing in students and young people from childcare to K through 12, to pre-K, to high school vocational programs, to no-cost community college and affordable four-year degrees at our great state colleges and universities. We're improving transportation with record federal funding for roads and bridges and a new state investment that is making our trains and buses more reliable. We're creating good jobs by supporting businesses and making our economy more competitive through the Mass Leads Act. And we're getting our veterans the care and support that they deserve through the HERO Act, a new program with new facilities and opportunities. The $59.6 billion budget that we filed today will continue all of that progress and builds on that progress in new and transformative ways. It's balanced, it's fiscally responsible, and we believe it is a blueprint for meeting the needs of residents and businesses while also taking care of taxpayer dollars. The core of this budget represents a 2.6% increase over the current fiscal year, which is below the current rate of inflation. We're controlling spending and tightening our belts, just as any other family or business has to do. We're making sure that every dollar is getting the maximum return, the maximum result for the people of Massachusetts and the taxpayers. And we're focusing those investments on things that people depend on, need, all over the state. Childcare, education, housing, transportation, human services, and so much more. We're investing in primary care because, as I spoke the other night when I addressed you all at the State of the State, we need more frontline workers in this area so that people can get appointments where and when they need them. We're also investing in behavioral health with education and health and human services working together to make sure, for example, that young people can get the support that they need in schools. Now, at the same time, through smart, forward-thinking fiscal management, we're taking on and looking to fix more of the foundational systems that have been neglected for too long in our state. We're going to invest in the infrastructure that our quality of life depends on. This includes transportation, where we have a 10-year, $8 billion plan to fix roads, bridges, and public transit across our state. And it includes public higher education, where we have a $2.5 billion plan to modernize facilities across our great 29 statewide campuses. That will give our students the world-class education that they deserve and give our economy the skilled workforce that it needs. Taken together, these two investments will inject more than $1 billion into our economy every year for a decade. Over that period, these two things alone will create an estimated 140,000 construction jobs and many more additional great jobs through economic growth and workforce development. In other words, our fiscal plan is not only about identifying the most important needs facing the residents of our state, coming up with a plan to fix and address those needs, it's also about building on the foundations to ensure further economic success for Massachusetts. I'll be clear on the fiscal management that informed the preparation of this budget. Costs are up across this country. I don't have to tell anyone at home that. And with that, we've seen an increase in the cost of services. So we asked our agencies to take a hard look to make sure that every dollar that is being spent is making that maximum positive impact that I talked about. Our teams rose to the occasion, and the result not only maintains best-in-the-nation service, it also makes possible new solutions to the challenges that we face. I look forward to working closely with the legislature, once again, to get their input and to work with them on the completion and passage and ultimate signing of a budget that keeps Massachusetts moving forward. We've proven, I believe, in the last 2 years that we can take on some tough challenges and actually deliver results. And that's what I intend to do through this budget, working with the legislature. I want to thank our team once again, and I'll now invite the Lieutenant Governor to say more.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate the opportunity to share a few more about our budget highlights. I want to thank all of our colleagues who joined us this afternoon from the Cabinet, across state agencies, and certainly from cities and towns who we know rely on these resources. We truly are Team Massachusetts, and a budget is ultimately about supporting those partnerships. The Governor and I go across the state, and we see how hard local officials, local businesses, and local residents are working every single day. And this budget is really about supporting them and getting them the resources they need to uplift and empower that work. That's why it increases local aid for cities and towns while fully funding the Student Opportunity Act to get our schools the resources they need to provide excellence for every student. It continues our nation-leading support for childcare and our progress towards universal pre-kindergarten. We're also proposing a new program to support older residents. We recently renamed the Executive Office of Elder Affairs to the Executive Office of Aging and Independence. This recognizes and supports the vitality and ongoing contributions our residents make as they age. Already, a number of cities and towns have worked to meet the criteria to be named an age-friendly community. This work spans across housing and transportation, public spaces, civic and social life, and more. With 20% of our state's population over the age of 60, we want to encourage and accelerate this work. So we are funding grants totaling $1 million for qualifying municipalities who expand age-friendly initiatives. These funds will go straight into communities through local organizations that make the most direct and positive impact for older residents. Look, we know seniors want and need to be able to age in place with dignity and respect. Many of our aging neighbors want to grow old in a way that enables them to thrive and explore their curiosities, and they need the help and support to do that. That's what these resources are about. This funding will help lead the way. A big part of the transportation funding plan that the Governor just talked about is also focused on local support. We're looking to increase our Chapter 90 commitments to cities and towns, that funding by 50%. That's a $100 million increase at the local level. That's going to help with local infrastructure, roads, and sidewalks. And if you keep in mind that 80% of the roads we all travel on are local roads, it's pretty meaningful to communities. It's going to help with those much-needed repairs coming off of a tough winter. We're also looking to invest $200 million in culverts that are critical infrastructure for flood protection. look, it doesn't cost less to do it later. These are the sorts of fortifying investments that we can make now that's going to help every community in the Commonwealth. As a longtime mayor and someone who is in contact all the time with local officials, lots of colleagues, I'm proud of the way that this budget responds to local needs. Cities and towns need a strong state partner, and this budget delivers on that promise. It's now my distinct pleasure to invite our Secretary of A&F, Matt Gorkowitz, to say a few more words.
If I made it too cold, like just, I don't, if,
Shimmy it down a little. People are
Okay.
shivering in the back.
sorry, all right.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here to present the Healey-Driscoll administration's FY26 budget. First, my team at A&F has worked tirelessly to put this budget together, and I want to thank them and recognize their dedication and teamwork. In particular, I want to thank you, the leader of our budget team, Assistant Secretary Chris Marino, and on the legal side, Martha, to help us and celebrate this awesome work that you've all done. So I just want to thank you all very much for the work that you've done. I also want to thank my fellow cabinet secretaries for their input and ongoing partnership throughout this process. Thank you all. And I especially want to thank Governor Healey and Lieutenant Governor Driscoll for your guidance and leadership as we crafted our vision for this next fiscal year. House One is a balanced, forward-thinking plan that builds on our achievements over the last two fiscal years and continues to address many of the challenges Massachusetts faces head-on. This budget takes a balanced and fiscally responsible approach, ensuring that Massachusetts is on a sustainable path to the future. Excluding surtax, the House One recommendation totals $59.8 billion, an increase of $1.48 billion over fiscal year 25 estimated spending. Our House One bottom line holds spending growth to 2.6%. This is below inflation, with the Consumer Price Index currently up 2.9% compared to last year. House One further our administration's commitment to making Massachusetts more affordable, equitable, and competitive through meaningful investments in transportation, education, housing, the environment, and supports for our cities and towns. It proposes programs that services to support most vulnerable residents, from youth mental health to reproductive care, while ensuring that we retain our competitive economic edge through investments in sectors like climate tech and life sciences. Many of the transportation and education investments we're announcing today will be possible because of our thoughtful approach to putting the voter-approved fair share surtax dollars to work for Massachusetts. Alongside House One, we are filing a supplemental budget with a plan for spending $1.32 billion in surplus fair share funds from fiscal year 24, when we collected $2.4 billion in surtax, far exceeding the $1 billion we budgeted. Across House One, this supplemental budget, our proposal for FY26 proposes near even split between fair share funding between education and transportation. When you combine what we put in the operating budget with what we've put in the supplemental budget, we've gotten equity between the two as far as it relates to the fair share spending. Given the scale of capital needs in both our education and transportation sectors, we are not simply planning to spend fair share dollars. We are proposing to continue leveraging this new revenue stream to expand the pie of available funds. Together, House One and our fair share supplemental budget bill presents a plan to dramatically transform transportation in Massachusetts, unlocking a total of $8 billion over the next 10 years to improve our roads, bridges, regional transit system, and to immediately stabilize the MBTA. We are also proud that House One expands key areas of our administration's Gateway to Pre-K agenda, including $475 million for C3 grants and $67.7 million for universal access to high-quality pre-K through the Commonwealth Preschool Partnership Initiative, the CPPI. Our commitment to a bright future for Massachusetts' next generation doesn't stop with early ed and care. House One also sustains our investments in free community college and works with the higher education bond bill that we filed yesterday to unlock an estimated $2.5 billion to address deferred maintenance, decarbonization, and modernize our public education campuses. Another highlight of House One are investments we are proposing to support local communities, including over $9.2 billion for local aid, a $480 million or 6% increase over the FY25 budget, as well as funding for the 5th year of the Student Opportunity Act. By supporting clean energy infrastructure, providing resources to implement the 2024 climate bill, and investing in the Disaster Relief Resiliency Fund that we established in last year's budget, House 1 ensures that Massachusetts continues to be a national leader in the fight against climate change and its impacts. House 1 also supports the implementation of Affordable Homes Act, the most comprehensive housing bond bill in the state's history, and aims to eliminate renter-paid broker fees. It also underscores that while House 1 proposes the critical, impactful investments that we've named, as well as many others, it does not waver from our commitment to being thoughtful stewards of taxpayer dollars. Over the last 5 years, demand for state services and increasing costs tied to inflation have caused spending to outpace tax revenue. In response, we carefully stretched every dollar, actively managing spending and controlling growth. We are also recommending a reasonable and thoughtful combination of solutions, including targeted savings and revenues. House 1 achieves balance and invests in our commitments without drawing on the stabilization fund, and we expect to grow the stabilization fund balance with additional deposits in both FY25 and in FY26. By proposing a budget that lives within our means, we are ensuring that Massachusetts is on a stable financial footing, not only in FY26, but for years and decades to come. Again, House 1 is balanced, responsible, and forward-looking plan. Thank you I want to thank our partners in the legislature, led by Chairman Michaelwitz and Rodrick, for their consideration of this proposal. I'm grateful for the ongoing collaboration with the chairs and their teams as we work together to develop and sustain the spending plan for FY26. We are proud to present this recommendation today, and we look forward to seeing these investments put into action and service to families and communities across the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Any questions? Any questions about the budget?
Governor, your budget proposes shifting RAP disbursements from 7,000 over 1 year to 7,000 over 2 years. That's a pretty significant reduction in what families will get. Why do that?
Well, I think we've got to live within our means, first of all, but I also think it's important to look at that alongside the other things that we have done. I think for the first time an administration has come in to EA and actually really leaned into better case management. It's why we've seen hundreds and hundreds of families exit our emergency assistance shelter system over the last several months. I think the reforms that I instituted, the policies that I instituted, are also leading to numbers going down. We have better job training, better job placement, work authorizations, as you know, for those who are not from Massachusetts. So all of this has to be looked at together, but I think it was, to me, the most sensible route that we could go in ensuring that our emergency shelter system continue to function and serve the needs.
RAP is a program to help people for foreclosures, evictions, utility payments, moving. I mean, how do you, as demand increases, why decrease the amount of money?
Well, I think, Chris, this is part of why we really leaned into the Affordable Homes Act. I mean, what I am really focused on as we look to this year ahead is implementing the great laws that we got passed the last couple of years. Affordable Homes Act, leaning into this $5 billion funding opportunity so that we can send and get going more and more housing construction. We want shovels in the ground. We want people in homes this year. So, my hope is with that and with more availability, we're going to see prices, come down. I'm a strong supporter of RAFT. I was head of the Civil Rights Division and in the Attorney General's office, led a lot of the work around fighting foreclosures on unlawful evictions, so I certainly understand and appreciate the importance of those programs, but I also know that I have a responsibility to present a budget that lives within our means right now.
Governor, you've signed bills to obviously for tax relief in 2023 and stuff on to raise taxes. Can you take us through some of the decisions here to cap deductions on charitable donations, which would impact what people claim, or subjecting different things like candy to tax, which would obviously increase costs? I mean, why take those steps when you take others to do tax relief?
Yeah, well, let me just sort of level set about charitable deduction. Remember, people have had the benefit of a federal charitable tax deduction. It was not until 2023 that people in Massachusetts had an ability to also take a state charitable deduction. We're not getting rid of that. In fact, most states, or at least half the states, if not the majority of states in New England, don't offer a state charitable deduction. We do, and that will continue. And the states that do offer that deduction don't offer it to the degree that we offer it. So we just think it's important to continue with that deduction, and also to make sure that we're doing so in a way that's going to be most effective. I don't think it's going to change people's giving based on our review and estimates review last year. With respect to the candy, so I love candy. Look, the LG was the former mayor of Salem, right? The candy capital of the world, all right? It turns out we both love M&Ms, have a preference for peanut, and she likes Mounds, which I think is strange because I like Almond Joy. The point is, the candy, all we're doing with candy, to be clear, this isn't about a new tax. What this is doing is simply saying, when you go to the grocery store, instead of having candy treated like a purchase of bread and eggs and milk, essential groceries, that candy's now going to be treated in the same way as when you go to the bakery in the back of the grocery store and pick up cupcakes for your kids. We think that makes sense.
Governor, can you talk a little bit more about mass health spending? As the budget notes, it's expanded a lot, and there are some tools to bring that in.
Yeah, well, let me focus on mental health spending. This is a budget that actually includes over $1.2 billion. $59 billion budget, $1.2 billion of that is going directly for mental health programming within DMH. There's programming elsewhere throughout other agencies, but I just say that because that is a sign of my commitment to mental health and to addressing the behavioral health needs of our residents. I also am continuing in this budget access to the 31 community behavioral health centers. I talked about these last week. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, providing important services to families, helping to divert individuals, especially young kids who might otherwise end up boarded in emergency departments. We're going to continue with all of that, and it's my intent that services will not be disrupted. So we have ongoing work and conversation with the workforce, with our agencies, and now with the legislature about all of this. But know that, there's a reason that Massachusetts is #1 in healthcare. We prioritize healthcare. We prioritize human services. I'm proud to be a governor of a state that has valued that. That will continue as we work forward through this budget process.
Governor, given these days goals to make things more affordable for state residents and costs are going up, why against the authorization of the Municipal Empowerment Act, which could drive up costs for state residents if towns choose to enact those options?
Yeah, well, as you heard from the LG, we care a lot about our cities and towns. We're mindful that costs are going up for everybody, not just across Massachusetts, but around the country, which is why we've been so focused on affordability. Secretary, would you like to speak to that, or LG specifically?
I'm happy to say a few words.
Yeah.
You think about the costs that municipalities are incurring. They really have one primary revenue source, and that's property taxes. Having other ways to raise revenues certainly provide a little bit, I would say, flexibility for communities. That's funding schools, that's funding public safety, that's funding public works. We're doing as much as we can to help, but there are still costs that communities have asked us to ensure we prioritize so they can make the choice. Not every community that has right now the ability to have a meals tax has done that, or a hotels tax. This is really providing flexibilities to cities and towns to understand what their needs are and then to have some tools to try and meet them. And Matt, feel free to add anything else.
No, I think that's great.
Governor, you're concerned about the potential loss of federal funding to the new administration, transportation, healthcare, other sectors?
Look, we're full steam ahead. My budget really accounts for what I think is possible, and we've gotten a lot of money in the door. I mean, I think we were probably the most successful, if not one of the most successful states over the last 2 years in terms of bringing federal dollars back to our state. $9 billion. So I don't know what we'll see from the incoming administration. I know that we're going to stay focused on maximizing every dollar that we do get, whether it's in our general fund or whether it's through federal funding. And we'll certainly continue to pursue federal funding.
Governor, the Justice Department has ordered an investigation into state officials.
I'm sorry, Chairman, do you mind saying?
President Trump's Justice Department has ordered an investigation into city and state officials who obstruct immigration enforcement. Are you concerned about that happening here in Massachusetts?
I haven't seen that yet. No, I'm not concerned. I have no reason to be concerned. Officials here follow the law. We're not a sanctuary state. Again, I'll have to look at what they issued.
You said that state police won't cooperate with immigration officials, though.
No, I think what I said is that when it comes to actual civil immigration enforcement, that is something that by law is delegated. It is the authority of federal law enforcement and federal immigration officials. I don't stand in the way of that. And I've also been clear, and I speak as a former prosecutor and attorney general, that when it comes to criminal activity, alleged criminal activity, or the apprehension of those who have committed crimes, whether they are people from Massachusetts or people who've come to Massachusetts, cooperation by my administration through the state police, by others in local law enforcement, will continue with our federal authorities.
State police will cooperate.
That's always been the case, okay? Look at, you used to cover it. The human trafficking cases, the gun trafficking cases, the drug trafficking cases. This isn't good. It's not good for residents anywhere. And, we want to make sure that we're always supportive of law enforcement when it comes to investigating, prosecuting, pursuing, holding accountable. And in the event you're talking about a person who is undocumented, the removal, the deportation of that individual. That was the case years ago. It continues to be the case now. It was the case under President Biden. It's the case now under President Trump. What I've also said, though, is I have concern about vulnerable communities who may be feeling a lot of fear based on some of the rhetoric. And, Massachusetts has laws in place. There are certain procedures that need to be followed. I've also said that I don't think it makes good economic sense to see efforts to round up and detain those who have not committed a crime but are here, and I've been here, and I've been working here and raising families here, and their kids are going to school here, and they're paying taxes here.
Governor, your budget attempts to
Welcome
give
to
your
yours.
economic team the authority to reduce or cut spending in any program included in 2 pandemic-era laws. That's a $3.7 billion economic development bill, I believe, from 22, and a federal aid and surplus bill from 2021, both signed by Baker. You expect that to yield $200 million in savings, but what exactly is your team going to target and cut from that bill? They're very expansive pieces of legislation.
I appreciate that. Secretary Gorkowitz, you want to
Sure.
speak to that?
That provision in the budget does allow us to go back to Chapter 268, Chapter 102. You're right, those were very expansive bills that were originally funded by ARPA dollars, some general fund dollars. Most of it was put in place in 2001, I think was the enactment date of that. There remains about there's a significant amount of that funding that has yet to be obligated, and even a larger amount that has yet to be unspent. Our plan over the next year, if this provision is to make it through the legislative process, is to go through those line items, go through those provisions, and identify where we may be able to, and particularly in cases where monies haven't have any design on them or been obligated yet, pull back on some of those funding as a way to help support some of the essential programs and services in the budget.
Sorry, I want to let, you had a question.
Follow-up question on Sherman's question on the immigration topic.
You want to take it?
Immigration?
Oh, no, I'll go. Yeah.
Funny.
You've clarified, and there's an SJC case that clarifies that it is Massachusetts state law that our local law enforcement doesn't have the authority to hold people, arrest people, and just civilize detainers. Is there any room for discretion? We know of at least one sheriff who expressed interest in complying with the federal government in that arena. Does he have the discretion to do so?
Look, I think that's probably a question better posed to the Attorney General in terms of the legal analysis, and I don't know about what the courts would say on that. What I will say is that, I remain committed to working with law enforcement when it comes to investigating, prosecuting, holding accountable those who commit crimes in Massachusetts, right? I mean, full stop.
The civil detainers is a different issue.
Civil detainers is a different issue, and currently it's governed by the SJC's decision in the Lund case.
Governor,
Great.
you talked about your administration's priority of primary care behavioral health. Can you explain a little more your decision to close the state public health hospitals, especially after we just saw 2 hospitals close?
Yeah, I think what this is about, I think of it as a redirecting of services, of care. You know, in one instances, and these are hard, I'll say when it comes to any closure, you know, I recognize that's a hard thing for those who are living in that facility. It's a hard thing for the workforce in that facility. It's a hard thing for the families whose loved ones are in these facilities. So we don't make these proposals lightly. And as I say, there's more work to do in terms of talking with all involved about the best course. But the goal here is simply to, you know, make sure that we're continuing to provide high-quality service and also account for some of the changing conditions, you know. In one place, we have a low utilization rate of only 16 beds. In another place, we have about 39 individuals housed, and a number of them, the majority of them, are over the age of 21. So looking at some other options, other facilities, places where maybe it makes more sense in terms of a consolidation of care or the right kind of care for those individuals. Also, this gets back to aging infrastructure. You know, one of these places we can't actually move more people in because the conditions are really poor in terms of the infrastructure. There haven't been investments there in a while. So that's the philosophy, but in any event, we'll see how things go as we go forward with all of this. But we are, in administration, very much committed to ensuring people's access to health care, women's access to reproductive health care, and certainly families and residents' access to care to address mental health and behavioral health needs and challenges.
Governor, your budget appears to sign off on
Thank
a
you.
reduction in staff in the Department
Thank you,
of Mental
guys.
Health. Can you just
Great.
clarify what exactly is going on there?
We'll follow up with that.
Is there, in fact, a
Thank
reduction
you,
in-
everybody.